What is your minimum that a school has to do to open safely, to have at least some students back in the classroom some of the time?
Yeah, that is going to depend a lot on where you are. So the way I talk about it when people ask me is that you should have a default position of what's your fundamental principle. The fundamental principle is that you should try as best as you possibly can to get the children back to school for reasons that when they're not in school, it's deleterious to the child, both psychologically and maybe even for nutrition. And then there are secondary downstream ripple effects for families that might have to stop work to take care of the children. So the goal should be to get them back. But then you have to have a but or however. And the however is fundamental to everything is the safety, the welfare, and the health of the children, of the teachers, and secondarily of the parents who may be interacting, which they obviously will, with their children. So if you look at our country, it's a big country, and you have to have flexibility because nothing is unidimensional here. You have some parts of the country where there's very little infection, and without any punity, with impunity, you could open up the schools and no problem. We call them the green states. And then there are those that have some degree of activity in which you really want to do something like you're suggesting. Maybe a hybrid, physical spacing, masks, outdoor classes, whatever you want to do to mitigate any spread. But there are other areas of the country when at any given time, and it may be just temporary, where there's so much activity in the community that you really want to think twice before you start putting kids back to school. And if you're in that zone, you probably are going to have parents who are not going to want to bring their children back, or teachers who are not going to want to show up. So when you talk about schools, David, you can't say the United States is one place. It's multiple regions.
At the same time, how do we create a sense of confidence, as you say, in teachers, in parents, in students themselves, that you need to do these things, don't cut them short, but if you do, you're reasonably safe? Because it's two messages, actually. You can't forego them, but if you do, it's probably going to be okay.
Well, that is a tough message. It is, because often when you try in a way, take a look at some examples. There have been examples of schools that have opened where, on day one, you wind up having children infected. We're going to have a policy which is still now. And first of all, I think we didn't mention one thing that's important. The CDC has put a lot of work into giving guidelines about how one can mitigate the spread of infection and the transmission of infection in schools. I think people should take a look at those guidelines.
Dr. Fauci, Larry Summers, you know him, former Treasury Secretary, economist from Harvard, has said, actually on Bloomberg, that what we're doing essentially is launching thousands of cruise ships this fall with a bunch of 19-year-olds, and he's referring to the dorms in universities. Does he have a point?
Well, if not done correctly, that you could have, because when you congregate people together. But if you look at what some of the universities are doing, who are opening, a lot of them are doing something similar in some respects to what some of the major league sports are doing, where they're testing everybody once to get there and then intermittently surveilling and then trying to determine if you do get an infection, get that person out and put them in a sequestered way. So some colleges, as you know, are going online completely. Some are doing online for certain of the years of college and in person in others. And some are doing it completely open, but we're doing a lot of testing. Again, it's not one size fits all.